On this channel, I spend a lot of time talking about pond filtration, and that's because I think it's the most important part of pond keeping. If you get the filtration right, keeping a pond is stupidly easy, and it's so rewarding. It also doesn't need to be expensive. The organisms and bacteria that filter water have been doing it for a really long time, long before humans showed up. All we really need to do is provide them with the habitat they require to thrive, and we'll be rewarded with clean, clear, healthy water. So if you're new here, my name is Kev, and the aim of my channel is to help people build and maintain a pond or water garden without spending a fortune. And if that sounds like something that interests you, you might like to subscribe and be sure to visit my website, ozponds.com. I thought today I'd just play some underwater shots and ramble on about the different ways you can supercharge your pond's filtration, so let's get into it. Number one is surface area. If you want clean, clear, healthy water, you need nitrifying bacteria. These bacteria grow on wet surfaces, and the more wet surfaces, the more bacteria you can potentially grow. Any pond filter, whether you buy it or build it, will aim to move water through surfaces that are colonized by these bacteria. So again, the more surface area available to bacteria, the more you can grow. The more fish you have, the more bacteria you need. And also larger fish require more bacteria or filtration than smaller fish. In my ponds, 9 times out of 10 I'm building a bog filter, as it's a large filter and it provides heaps of surface area. If you don't have enough bacteria, the water will most likely go green, as single-celled algae will grow to supplement the lack of bacteria. Green water is not bad for your fish, but it does make them hard to see. There's many different types of algae, and even with plenty of surface area for bacteria, it's quite likely that algae will grow. Some algae is quite beneficial, but some people just can't stand it. I've made videos on algae treatments, so I'll link those down in the description. But algae does help filter water, it provides food for tiny organisms and fish, it helps break down organic materials, and it provides oxygen. And that brings us to point number 2, oxygen. The bacteria, the fish, the snails, the shrimp, whatever's living inside the pond, it's all consuming oxygen. In aquatic environments, these organisms and animals get their oxygen directly from the water, H2O. Therefore, to aid in filtration, we want the water to have plenty of oxygen. To do this, we need to mix the water with air. There's lots of ways this can occur. Agitation, like even the wind creating ripples on the surface of a pond, adds oxygen to the water. A waterfall or a fountain can add oxygen, plants add oxygen, algae adds oxygen, and like with the bacteria, the larger the fish, or the more fish you have, the more oxygen demand there'll be. So as the bacteria, algae, and tiny organisms break down waste in the pond, they consume oxygen. And that brings us to point number 3, reducing the amount of waste breaking down inside the pond. Waste inside the pond is inevitable, so we need to decide how we're going to deal with it. I like my combination of a bog filter and an intake bay. Again, this is what I'll use 9 times out of 10. The bog filter will trap quite a lot of heavy sediments, and the intake bay is like a supersized skimmer. It pulls in floating materials like leaf drop and pollen, and from here it can be netted out. Or you can add filter pads to capture it as it breaks down and sinks. You can also use other types of filters that capture solids like drum filters or swirl filters. The thing with filters are that they're designed to capture crap. Once they're full, they clog, or the waste will just bypass them and end up back in the pond. And that's one of the reasons why I like the bog filter intake bay combo, as it allows me to be lazy because I'm hopeless at regular maintenance. The more you clean your filters, the more organic waste and crap you'll remove from the pond. This in turn lightens the load on the bacteria. And the pond itself is also a sediment trap. Because the pond is larger and calmer in terms of water movement than the filters, a lot of waste will settle inside the pond. That means that you will most likely need to net or vacuum up some of this accumulation of waste from time to time. Again, if you have large fish and the pond is densely stocked, you'll need to do this more often. If you're lightly stocked, your pond and you're keeping small fish, you can go much longer without that build-up causing any significant issues. If you don't want to net or vacuum at all, you might want to incorporate solids handling pumps, bottom drains, or a suction grid system that will draw water from the bottom of the pond and send it to the filter that will capture the waste. Just remember, this might end up creating more in the way of maintenance, as these filters will need to be checked and maintained regularly to be effective. There's a ton of ways to plumb up a filtration system. You just need to find a style and a system that resonates with you. So point number 4 is adding plants. We already touched on the fact that plants provide oxygen, but they do so much more. Plants also consume nitrogen to grow, and that helps complement the job of the nitrifying bacteria. They also like phosphate, which is another common nutrient in ponds that can help promote too much algae. When they die and break down within the pond, they provide sugars and carbon that can feed the bacteria and microorganisms and help them reproduce. Plant roots can help trap sediments, and as the bacteria and organisms break down these compounds, the plants can consume the nutrients to fuel more growth. Plants are also going to provide hiding areas for beneficial organisms that help you create a more robust ecosystem. Again, a bog filter is great, as even if you have fish that eat plants, the bog filter provides a safe place where they can work their magic without getting trashed. Point number 5 is the pond itself can be the filter, or at least enhance it. A pond filled with plants and a deep substrate might not even need any additional filtration. Again, as long as the pond is stocked sensibly, this pond here has no movement or a dedicated filter. The pond itself is the filter. You could also add filtration into the pond directly, like a suction grid moving water actively through the pond's substrate, or even a bog filter into the pond itself. But when we incorporate things like plants, rock, pebble inside the pond, even if it has a dedicated filter, we make the system more robust. That means it's more self-sufficient. It will easily survive if the pump dies or there's no power for an extended period of time. The rock, pebble and plants provide heaps more surface area for bacteria, hiding zones for microorganisms, and in turn a good natural source of food for the fish. If you don't need to feed your fish, there's less waste, and that means less demands on the traditional filters. And that brings me to point number 6, encouraging these beneficial organisms and bacteria. Let them do the heavy lifting. Don't overclean the pond or filters, don't treat with chemicals, and don't chase certain numbers because you read a pond needs to have a certain pH, KH, or GH. If you just want a simple pond or water garden with some fish that will be part of the ecosystem, it's so easy. Nature knows what it's doing, and you just need to get out of the way and let it do its thing. That's my philosophy anyway, and it's not for everyone. Some people can't handle the algae or the mold on their rocks. And that's okay, so for point number 7, I've got something for you. If you want to have a pond with lots of fish or a really clean pond, you'll just need to be more active and possibly use some chemical filtration methods. Activated carbon is great at removing unwanted substances from water. UV sterilizers will kill green water, unwanted bacteria that passes through the light, as well as certain parasites. Ozone generators can boost the redox potential of your pond and make it almost sterile, like a swimming pool, but when managed correctly, still be able to support life. Hydrogen peroxide can be used to kill stubborn algae, so can sodium percarbonate. Some of these topics I've shown in dedicated videos. I'll link some in the description, but for me I like to keep it natural. If you would like to learn how I build my ponds, the best way is to just binge watch my vids or head over to my website ozponds.com. I've got plenty of handy free resources, as well as a cheap cheat sheet that has all the formulas I use when I design my pond filtration. Filtering water is easy. Owning a pond doesn't need to be expensive or hard. It should be enjoyable. There's lots of ways to learn about this stuff. Just find a system that resonates with you and copy it. Anyway, I hope this video and the resources I've linked are helpful. If you thought so, feel free to give the thumbs up button a little tickle. Thanks for watching. See ya.